Okay, so next we're going to move to the Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund. Thank you very much. So we have a series of different applications here, and just a quick reminder that we did add some additional funding to this before this year due to the COVID response and the annual plan. So Mike Davidson's moving the whole lot. Do I have a seconder? Tim? Yep, that's okay. We'll just do that and we'll move to questions. If we've got those people, we've... Okay, that's fine. Right, so questions? Andrew.
Thank you. The Arts Centre, clearly there's a far bigger conversation needs to be had with the Arts Centre around strategic approach to future sustainable funding and some quite big challenges that are ahead of that organisation. I would have preferred, I think it's fair to say, to have taken a joined-up approach. Did you consider wrapping this 150,000 that's recommended here into that bigger conversation, or can you articulate the good reasons why we would look at dealing with this separately today?
I'll give that a go. So back in August, this committee established a much larger discretionary response fund than previous years in recognition of the impacts of COVID-19 and the economic aspects of that on community organisations, knowing that there was going to be uncertainty, there were going to be organisations who were impacted on a number of levels, including through loss of revenue, and the council wanted funds available to support those organisations as those things came to light. The Arts Centre didn't apply to the Strengthening Communities Fund and it came in through the Discretionary Response Fund, and so that's how they've fitted from an eligibility point of view, as I guess a starting point. And there are a number of other discussions going on, but it felt appropriate for us to process their application and bring it to you in a timely manner for consideration. Kitty, did you want to add anything just about Arts Centre sort of in general?
No, I mean, we're certainly aware that the Arts Centre were interested in having a longer term conversation and see that as an important conversation to be having, and this is a measure to address the current situation.
So the recommendation today really is looking at this as a holding position pending those bigger discussions, without preempting the way that any of that might go that we need to have as part of the LTP development. But this 150 is your recommendation around what needs to happen as a holding pattern.
Yeah.
To fill the gap between now and those longer decisions being made, whatever they be.
Yeah, and there's been no change in their funding position that would affect this since this application been processed and the decision today?
There has been one change since the details of this were written for the report, and that was that the Arts Centre were a recipient of the, well, you know the name of it.
Oh, it's just gone
The STAP Fund, Tourism Protection Fund that a number of tourism organisations received, including Orana Park, and they received $500,000. So that's to cover 2 years, to support them over 2 years, for covering things such as maintaining some staffing levels, general maintenance, cost of insurance, and program and activities. Now, Arts Centre's costs are higher than $500,000 over 2 years, and so them receiving that grant doesn't make them eligible for this, but obviously it improves their position from when they applied.
So have you considered whether that would change the recommendation for the 150, and is there a change to that recommendation in light of the information you've just provided, or do you still believe that the recommendation for 150 is correct?
I think they still have need. Obviously, the longer term is a discussion to be had, because I think their need is going to not diminish over the years.
So the recommendation for 150 still stands, notwithstanding that further operational grant in the meantime?
Correct.
We believe so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie?
I've got a different question about the trolley bus system. Can I ask that? So, when you read the staff assessment, it seems like they've, the Historical Society is very much needing the funding to get the tramway going, yet it's not recommended, and there's sort of no explanation for why.
So the initial report written by staff goes through a staff panel before it's delivered here. So it was essentially the recommendation was based in the staff panel around the fact that in terms of the draw card to Ferrymead Park, which is where it's situated, that already with trains and trams operating at the site, that the priority of this fund to this particular group might not have the benefit of some other discretionary response applicants.
Additionally, the panel felt that while it was a worthy cause, it didn't quite fit with the aforementioned priority of this established DRF around things that have come up out of the blue and needs responding to. This was more of a planned type approach, so there might in time be other grant funds that might be more appropriate. But that decision ultimately lies with yourselves.
Thank you. Pauline?
Yeah, I'm on that one as well. But I read the report as saying that this is in a response to new electrical safety standards, which actually currently prevent them from running. So surely that would fit the criteria for a discretionary response application?
Oh, it meets the criteria. It's just how well it aligns, and that
Yeah.
the panel's feeling was there might be other projects that align more closely. But again, it falls to yourselves to make that ultimate decision.
Because currently they can't operate until they do this work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pauline, are you
Thank you.
looking at changing? Are you looking?
Yes,
at,
I'd like to support this application.
Okay, so what value would you like to?
What they applied for, 22,000.
To the whole amount?
Yep.
Okay. And Jake, you said that you were looking at a potential amendment to. Was that on the same one?
No, possibly speak that I'll wait Anne's question before I...
Okay. Right, Anne.
My question is clear about the submission funding. So, just to clarify, so you said that the request budget was not cost. Is that in an ideal world, that would be the amount of money that they would love to get if they to keep going the way they are? Is that something to clarify?
That is the total cost of them to be able to deliver the service is 130,000.
Right.
Yep.
And is that one worker or two?
Previously they've had two workers. They now have one worker, and this is all a realignment, I guess, within the mission around priority. However, the reason I've backed it for 100% of what they've asked for is I believe it is still a very high priority, and if timing had been different, then they may have applied for more, but at the moment they have one staff, hence it's less than last year.
So if they were to be given more, they might be able to put another staff member on now.
Yeah, problem is they requested 75 and we can't give them more than they request.
All right, thank you. I'm just wondering why they've asked for less than they have in previous years.
So last year there was actually an added part to the program, and they were looking at a red zone program to take street people out during the day and look at projects through red zone and everything else going on. That's been held, so they've decided not to apply for that this year, but that would be a future program that we're looking at to partner with them on.
Okay. One last question, if I may. Yep, thanks. I just wanted to say thanks, Gary. I know you've done an amazing work behind the scenes to get all this information and to work with them. Given the fact that we know there's going to be more need coming forward with the economic situation, and we're probably already seeing that in terms of numbers, and the fact that it has been an incredibly successful program in terms of dealing, is there any other, and we can only give them what they've asked for, are there any other places that we can go to help them with funding?
So they seem reasonably sure of other funders themselves, and so they're very grateful for what they've got from council at the moment. and other funders are definitely what they're looking at. Now things have changed and the situation has changed, and I believe you're right. I think there'll be more of a need. I'd expect that they will start to look at other options.
Continue working with them in
Absolutely.
terms of how we can continue to support?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Tim, then Jake.
Thank you. I guess following on from what you've said with regards to other organisations and the economic situation we're in, so going with your recommended amounts, the amount remaining in the fund is 561,000, just over, if that's going with your recommendations.
So prior to this meeting, the balance is 561,000.
So with your recommendations,
with the recommendations, the balance would drop to 266,000.
yeah, and we're unaware of the other organisations that may be needing and requiring and coming to us. So if we wanted to up this, that could then be detrimental to other organisations that kind of will need and may need support in the future.
Correct.
It's the crystal ball part
Yep,
of this role
absolutely.
of just being
Yep.
unknown.
Yep.
Yeah.
But all these organisations, as you said, along with using the city mission, they do have ability to approach other funders.
Absolutely.
And so maybe that would stimulate other organisations to supporting these groups rather than always being the council.
Yeah, and I think as a statement, we've started to develop a lot better networking with other funders.
Yep.
And so in terms of being able to go to other funders and support on behalf, we're starting to be more effective there as well.
In
Right.
fact, just on that, by way of example, one of the applications which hasn't been discussed yet but is sitting there, which is Cultivate Christchurch, that's exactly how that played out. One meeting with the applicant with 4 funders in the room, all hearing what their plans and situation and predicaments or goals were, and all identifying funds that might be suitable and how we can all pitch in together, pending the decision of our decision makers to help them achieve their goals. And that's exactly how that played out.
Great, that's
So we're
really
just one of 4 funders.
it's an interesting way to go forward. It's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Just looking at the NZPC funding, how come the amount recommended was lower than the amount requested?
Yeah, so they've received funding through council previously in the Capital Endowment Fund, and the intention of that grant was primarily around concerns raised by the councillors in regards to street workers operating north of Billy Ave into the St Albans area, and so that was intended to be a one-off grant, and that position that was created for that has continued her work to great success. We haven't had any complaints of workers north of there, but have applied back for a similar amount as they previously received.
I think in answer to the number,
Yeah.
to match fund the government, the MOH is at 13,000, and we felt it was fair for local government to match that. And again, organisations to consider other funding options within the city.
So just what would be the consequences of the $26,000 reduction? Well, it's not a reduction because it hasn't been granted, but
The previous grant was back in 2018, so the position has continued to operate without council funding over the previous financial year, but it would be tied into the ability, because the Ministry of Health funding is tagged to sexual health objectives, providing of sanitary products, etc. Council funding in the past has gone towards the more social outcomes in terms of antisocial behaviour, violence on the streets, reducing tensions.
And a general comment, if I may, that grants towards wages tend to help tie that organisation to maintain its staff over a certain time frame, and depending on the size of that means how quickly they either have to go out and apply for further grant money or when the position has to be ended. So that's usually the impact of the size of these types of grants on wages, is the time it buys them before the cash flow hits and they need to go out to other funders.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? No, so at this point, Yanni?
Just in regards to the Arts Centre, I mean, I'm just trying to understand when we have that close a lock, and particularly around the level of staffing. I know we've had some information about what reductions they've made, but have you done a sort of assessment about the kind of staffing costs and the staffing remuneration? Looking at the financial statements, it seems like it's gone up quite considerably over the last few years. And I guess I was just concerned that we have a look at what we're actually funding as much as the quantum.
So we don't usually have an open book relationship with community organisations where we drill down to that level of specifics. We're just one funder, and we haven't been funding the Arts Centre for a number of years. So once we receive an application, we take a good look at what's going on. But these guys haven't applied for wages; they've applied for insurance and the list that's there, keeping the lights on. Katie, did you want to add anything about kind of the staffing?
No, I think you've summed it up.
Okay. So, as Councillor Turner alluded to, larger conversations could be valuable, and if they're at a higher strategic level than a funding application, then they may be able to dive into things like this. But we were satisfied in terms of the efforts they were making in this time frame and the previous, period around reducing their costs, as we would expect groups to do when they're coming in for money, to look at, well, what can you do before, alongside grants from council.
I think it's an appropriate question to ask at the next phase, Councillor. I do think if we look at what they've asked for, wages does not appear there, so we wouldn't have drilled or felt the need to get into it. We justify what they've asked for, but at the next phase, when they're here to discuss ongoing funding, I think that's a very valid point to be asking.
So, I know you've sent through the financial statements, and there's been some net surpluses in the last 2 financial years of, quite considerable quantums. I guess what I'm struggling with is, especially when they've got the COVID money, why they've still got this need.
So
because we heard from them last time, and we were going to do it through the LTP. That was kind of what I thought when they came to council previously.
I think some of the information that you've been asking for was in the information that was sent through by them on Tuesday. It's now up on the hub.
Yeah, no. Well,
you have to be careful when staff are being asked to do stuff across stuff, that the detail sits with the organisation. So answer what you can, but we've also been sent some significant amounts of information by the organisation.
I guess I just want to talk to the surpluses. With an organisation that owns significant assets and their buildings are valued at close to $400 million, a small change in a revaluation of an asset can spike the eventual profit at the line, but it doesn't necessarily relate to cash flow, or sometimes can even make cash flow more challenging because now you're insuring at a higher price, etc. So it is relevant, and we look fairly closely at those finances and that sort of money they're making, but they're not returning surpluses from programs or operational activities. In fact, COVID had a negative impact on their operational revenue from hiring to the tune of about 300,000. So we were looking at that more than the line that you see there, which is their profit for the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. And so just to be clear, so we haven't looked at the reason why their staff costs have increased dramatically over the last few years as part of the assessment?
Deke, we've been clear, and we heard before that actually in recent times, not the last couple of years, but just very recently this year, they've actually cut their staffing costs by 30%.
Well, I know, but they've doubled in about the last 5-6 years. It's quite considerable. So
no, we haven't. Well, I haven't analysed that increase over the past years. We were more focused on the current situation.
They need more staff to carry it. Yeah. Okay, so we can get that information through for the next stage as well. And I think there'll be a significant amount of information for the next phase when those the ongoing funding requests come through. Are there any further questions? Melanie, then Jimmy.
Sorry to ask another question, but it's about the trolley bus system again. Those other sources of funding, what years are they from?
The ones listed on the matrix are all for the current financial year, I believe.
So that would be almost enough to cover that total cost by the looks of things. Like, is it for other projects?
There's a lot of different elements in the overall repair of the trolley buses. They've come to us specifically for the electrical poles aspect of that.
Okay.
Okay, Jimmy?
Yeah, I also ask this one, the trolley buses, how many days? Because there has been it is, but now they are trying to, on event days for the heritage park. How many days for those event days?
Usually
Per year.
per year, they roughly run about one major event a month on the Steam Sundays, but they're changing up their schedules currently with kind of a rethink of how Ferrymead runs their events in general.
Okay.
So currently around 12 a year.
Okay. But if they are not the replacement of those traction supports, whether it's a bigger risk for passenger or not?
They won't be
Won't be able
running.
to operate.
They won't.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at the stage where we've got potential amendments for a couple of them. So Pauline is keen to see some amount for the trolley buses. Are you keen to have the full amount, noting that we don't normally give full amounts for these things? And do you want to test that with the room?
All right, in light of the guidance from the chair, I would propose 15,000.
Okay.
Oh, Aaron's got a question, I think. Or
Aaron?
is he seconding it?
Well, just to clarify, the requested budget is, the total cost is 45. They've requested half of that, which is 22.7. So they haven't requested the full amount for the project.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
So-
Pauline has, are you keen for that to be higher, Aaron?
Well, just the requested amount of half the project of 22.7. I mean, what's the point in having a heritage asset sitting out in Ferrymead that the city can't use? Because
You're in debate.
you can't. That was a question. What's the point in having a heritage asset?
Okay, so thank you. So, so it looks like there's a move to have some funding on there. So I'll initially ask.
I've moved 15, I just need a seconder.
Okay, so initially I'll say for the mover and seconder of the whole thing, are you happy to have 15,000 included? No. Okay, so it will be an amendment. Do I have a seconder for 15,000 for the trolley buses? Melanie?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Aaron. Okay, we'll do Aaron on that one. Okay. So in that case, we'll do that one first. Is there any debate on the amendment of $15,000 for the trolley bus system restoration? Pauline?
Look, I'd really seek support to support this because, they do run on oily rag. We know they're down there. But this is Ferrymead is an incredible asset to our city and becoming more and more so as historical items obviously get older and more interesting. And what these guys do when they're actually repairing these things, their workshops open for people to go in and have a look and learn. They get a lot of children through there, they get a lot of people through, and currently these things cannot run because of a change in electrical standards, and I think to give them a hand would be a really prudent use of some of this money. It'll still leave $247,000 in the pot, rounding off the numbers, so I do seek your support for this, for Ferrymead.
Thank you. Any further debate? No, in that case, I will put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, can we have a show of hands for no? 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare that carried. Would you guys like your votes recorded there? Okay, so Anne, Tim, Sam and Mike. And we'll move to Councillor Mcclellan's proposed amendment. So you're going for the full amount for NZPC? Okay, do you have a seconder for that? Anne? Okay, is there any debate on this one?
Yeah, I'll open it up and just say that I think that this is obviously really, really important work that we should be trying to support as much as possible. And if this extra bit of funding means that the work of this outreach worker can continue for a longer period of time, or mean less funding applications to this organisation, I think that's a good thing. I know firsthand how much of a difference this outreach coordinator has made, and how much this organisation struggles with even basic costs like text message alert systems to warn workers when there's dodgy clients hanging around. And I think that there's a lot that we haven't, that there's a lot more we should be doing in terms of looking after our street workers, and that we could be doing into the future. And this is kind of the least we could be doing in this city, especially given our track record.
Thank you very much. Any further debate? Anne?
Just that I feel proud of our city and the way that we actually do really support our most vulnerable, and I can't think of any more vulnerable population than some of these women, and I think that we, as Jake has said, anything that we can give will create a safer community for them and for the wider community, and it fits and networks and connects to the overall work that the City Mission is doing, for example. It's all part of a big picture. So it's about caring for our most vulnerable. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Thank you very much. Any further debate? Councillor Davidson?
Well, just quickly, and I guess this is looking at the overall applications we have in front of us, and actually the amount we have in this pot is limited. And the problem is, if we spend it all when we get these applications, we could, halfway through the year and the whole fund's exhausted. And actually, that's not a good outcome. And I think we see this time and time again when near the start of the financial year, when we get these applications coming to us, we quickly try and increase everything and don't realise the outcome of that is actually there'll be groups that will miss out later in the year. Look, I would love to have given more money to all these groups who are asking for it, but we only have a limited amount of funds in this pot, and that's why I'll be saying no to this.
Thank you. Pauline?
Thank you. Look, this is a great project and it's proven that it has worked. We had nothing but big trouble a couple of years ago. This is obviously working. My issue with this is the amount. I think it's a huge jump from the staff recommendation of 13. It's also pretty unbalanced as the contribution, which I saw as a fund match from the Ministry of Health. So if this doesn't pass, can I foreshadow a foreshadowed motion or I'll ask the mover to reduce the amount to a more realistic, palatable figure, because I think I support what Mike Davidson said, that we do have to be careful there's enough in the fund to spin out for the rest of the year. And I think that, I would personally like to see 25.
Okay, so we're at the point now where, I'll get to you next, Melanie, where, Pauline, you're not able to foreshadow a future amendment because you've already moved one. And so you won't be able to do that, I'm afraid. Yeah, Melanie?
Well, I agree with Pauline. I'd go 26,000. So I'll foreshadow a motion then.
Okay, thank you. So should this one fail, there'll be a further amendment for a different amount. Okay. Any further debate? Tim?
Yeah, we have funding agreements with other parties with regards to some things, this one being one of them. I'm just wondering if we suddenly go up, how does that affect it? I mean, I'm happy with the staff recommendation and I think we should stick with it for a number of reasons, but we don't know what's around the corner, and it could be something that is really as its need as this, and if the bucket's empty, we've got a responsibility to all ratepayers of Christchurch. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we've got Andrew and then Jake.
Thank you. I do support this, and I'll signal I'll be supporting this, and if this doesn't pass, then I'll support the foreshadowed amount. We are almost a third of the way through the financial year, and I'd prefer to get these funds out there so that they can start to have positive benefit to our communities. And I do really think that this project is one where supporting now to a greater degree will actually avoid problems that we almost inevitably would have a role in helping to solve later.
Thank you. Jake?
Yeah, following actually nicely on from what Andrew was going to say, let's be honest, we're going to fund this organisation lots over its existence. And actually what we're doing is front loading a contribution that council is going to make otherwise anyway. Much better to front load our contribution, actually cut down on some of the red tape for the organisation, and actually I find it a little bit. I don't know, I find it a bit cynical that people are happy to spend $150,000 on the arts centre like that and want to quabble over $26,000 for something like this.
Okay, Yanni, that was Jake's wind up. Sorry.
You did
Yeah. Yeah. Right, and with that, I will put the amendment that is for $40,099.
No, it's fine.
Is Aaron only just done it? Because that was Jake's right of reply.
Just did it. Yep. You only
And
just
just
put it
sorry,
through.
that was Jake winding up because he'd spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, I will put the amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. Okay, hands up.
No.
Hands up, Aaron, so you were a no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I declare that carried. That's right. 6. Division? Okay.
Councillor Templeton.
Aye.
Councillor Mcclellan. Aye. Councillor McDonald. No. Councillor Johansson.
Yes.
Councillor Galloway.
Yes.
Councillor Daniels. Aye. Councillor Coker.
Was it me? It's just a leader, John.
Next.
Councillor Chi.
Yes.
The Mayor. Councillor Scandrett.
No.
Councillor Kewen.
No.
Councillor Davidson.
No.
Councillor Cotter. No. Councillor Turner.
Yes.
That's 9 in favour and 5 against.
Thank
Two
you. I
extra
declare that
votes.
carried. Okay, so we now move to the substantive. We've got 2 amendments that have come through. So I'm just checking that the mover and seconder of the substantive, so that's Councillors Davidson and Scandrett, are you still happy to be the movers and mover and seconder with the amendments through? Yeah, great. Okay, do we have any debate on the substantive? Andrew?
Thank you. It's notable that the project title for the Arts Centre application is Keep the Arts Centre Open. And I think, you know, the risk that the Arts Centre might close is something that we need to have significant regard to. It's a significant asset in our city, and it's got a significant role to play in the life of our city as well. So closure of the Arts Centre isn't an acceptable outcome, and I was very pleased with the answers to the questions that I asked earlier that shows that, you know, what we are essentially doing is supporting a sustainable holding pattern to give us a bit of breathing space to have some of those bigger discussions that we need to have as we go through the development of the LTP. And, you know, they are separate discussions than the decision that we're making today. And I certainly don't want to preempt the nature or the outcome of that conversation or what the approach might be. And, of course, there are a number of different approaches that we could take as we work through some of the longer-term issues that have been well canvassed in the media and with us around the Arts Centre and its future sustainability. I think we need to consider that in the context of other heritage facilities that also have a life to play in the life of the city, and a really balanced approach across a number of different, additional, and quite possibly competing needs. But as long as we're going into that with our eyes open, I just wouldn't want today's decision to be seen as preempting any particular approach to the Arts Centre as we move into those discussions that I'm very keen to have as positively as we possibly can. I'll just make a comment on insurance. It came up in the questions a couple of times. You would think logically that as you repair a building and you strengthen it and therefore you make it less likely to be subject to an insurance claim, that the insurance liability would decrease rather than increasing. And that certainly signals one of the areas that we'll be very keen to focus on as we have those future discussions. But I just wanted to comment further, particularly given the answers to questions earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Pauline?
Just quickly, look, I'm sure we all recognise the difficulty and the challenges in administering and divvying up this fund, so I want to recognise the work staff have put in, and also being tolerant to our questions and our changes to your recommendations. So thank you for that. And also in the light of the Prostitutes Collective application, in my debate I did say this is a successful program, it's working for our city, it's taken a lot of angst away from everybody. I do support it, I just wanted a slightly reduced amount because considering what the balance of the pot is, but also the fact that now that project has been 100% funded, more from the City Council than the Ministry of Health, it would be good to get a message back to them that if we did start this off as a partnership, that they may come forward with perhaps a counterbalance in their share next time. So if you could manage that, I think that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yanni.
Thank you. I'll just ask that you put the Arts Centre one separately. I'm going to abstain on that. I think we actually need more information. Having had a look at the financial statements, I would much rather take a partnership approach and look at some of the changes that we need to make going forward to get it on a more sustainable footing. I don't think just giving the grant at this stage without some commitment to some of the and understanding of the other issues is appropriate. So I'm going to abstain on the Arts Centre. I just wanted to talk on the outreach ones, both the city mission and the street worker, the street outreach coordinator. You know, I think this is one of the most cost-effective solutions we have as a city to reducing the costs on our society. And I still recall as a young person in the city when 2 young people were murdered in a short space of time, and there was a march down Colombo Street with the young people of the city asking for help and support. And at that time, and there'll be staff members that are here today that remember, council decided to fund some street workers to work with those young people, and in that time it actually had an amazing impact. And some of these and so I want to acknowledge that actually funding people to work alongside communities that are at risk is a very small investment for the harm that it reduces and for the impact it makes on the safety and well-being of so many of our most vulnerable. So I'm really proud of the council in supporting these grants today. I believe this is a very good investment and it will pay us back in untold ways around the safety and the well-being of so many that people that we often sometimes don't see, and people that actually need the support. So, you know, I just wanted to acknowledge that because this is something the city has had proud legacy of supporting in the past, and I think it's important that we support it going forward.
Thank you. Anne.
Continuing on from Yanni's comments, I think the benefit to the business community, for example, in terms of the work that's being done in the inner city with those on the who find themselves on the street. Recently, or not that long ago, I was getting lots of emails, and I'm sure others have, from business owners who are concerned about those sitting outside their premises, and it does have an impact. And so the money and the resource that we put into that doesn't just benefit the people who really need it, but it has a lovely outflowing effect. So when you look at what we're supporting here, it's a real snapshot actually of the city and its needs, and I think it reflects really well a good use of money to provide to ensure a city that is vibrant both in its heart and in its soul. And I think I feel really proud of what we've done here today. So thank you.
Any further debate? Aaron? Yep. Aaron?
Yeah, it's no doubt we're a city that cares, but when I look at this list and what this money goes to, and this pot will run out, Councillors Davidson and Cotter clearly spout that out, and they are correct, that will come home to roost. A number of these grants today should be falling with central government. When you have people that live on the streets, begging on the streets, or sex workers on the street being murdered, you've got a government that's failed. And it doesn't matter who's in power. I'm not pointing the finger that way. These are central government responsibilities to make the people of your city safe and to have an inclusive society. And in our city, it keeps going back on the ratepayer, and it should be central government. That's what taxes are for. So we've got a new government now. Let's have some good conversations with them to try and solve some of these problems going forward, because our city isn't as inclusive as it should be, and there's a lot of work to be done. But our coffers are not very deep, and theirs are a lot deeper. Well, they were last month.
Thank you. Any further debate?
I'm not going to say my red lights don't stop
Okay, in that case, I will put number 2 first. All those in, that's the Arts Centre. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? And 1 abstention from Yanni. And then I will put the rest of them. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you very much. Declare that carried. Well done, everyone. So we have one last very small